Mr. Belleavoine. Go ahead and give your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. It truly impresses me that this is probably the most important reason why I'm here. My name is Ted Belleavoine. I started with the Sheriff's Office in 1989, and I'm retired in 2015. If there's anything you need to know about me, I have door hangers and brochures that can be available out there that you can read and focus on. More than talking about myself, I don't have 12 years of experience, you know, patting myself in the back and talking about myself. What I've done for 30 years is come to your door, come to your community, come to your church, and ask how I can help you and address your concerns. So talking about myself, I'm a little foreign to that. So I'll focus on what I'm going to do as your sheriff. Number one, immediately address the failed hiring and retention practices in the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office. I want to enhance our efforts. Number two, a relentless pursuit of those who sell opioids, drugs, harm our families. I will expand the vice narcotics team, educate this team, equip them, and have them enhance their efforts. I think currently we probably have a handful of officers. That hasn't changed since 2006. Number three, immediately fill the vacant positions in our school resource officer program. Again, that's something that hasn't changed since 2006. I read some of these things from, they came from this document. You can easily find it online. It's a strategic management plan for 2006. There are many, many statements in here that we said we would accomplish, and you've had 12 years where it has not occurred. I want to make that happen. I was a part of the team. Sheriff Cameron was a part of the team. Sheriff Zollick was a part of the team. I believed in that document wholeheartedly, and I haven't seen it come to fruition. Traffic's always been a passion of mine. I want to expand our traffic safety. We should probably be somewhere in the range of 10 or 12 officers who address these concerns on a daily basis. Just last year, we killed 16 individuals on our highways. That's somebody's mother, father, sister, brother, son, or daughter. Having developed and participated in the First Community Policing Program, I want us to move to a true community service officer agency, just like what was stated in the 2006 Strategic Management Plan. We haven't done that. We have an officer, we have a CSAVE unit down here, I don't see, and we have an officer in Leonardtown. Both of those were in place and process for 12 years. I don't see any community service group or service officer in the Golden Beach, Mechanicsville, Chapmanville area. And simply put, do any of you know the officer who truly services your area? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I am your sheriff, Tim Cameron. I've been a member of the Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff from July 1980 to 2005, and I've served as your sheriff since 2006. In order to better serve my community, I pursued and earned my bachelor's and master's degree from Johns Hopkins University, as well as attended specific management and leadership training while with the agency. I continue to learn. I'm passionate about my profession. We have improved employee salary, employee benefits, and incentives. We have developed a lateral bonus program to attract experienced officers, and we focus on our diversity recruiting program. We're utilizing civilian expertise and support positions to return the cops back to cop work. We're re-employing our retirees in positions that reduce workload on patrol officers and our detectives. With our community partners, we're addressing the heroin opioid epidemic, saving lives, providing community training, working to reduce the stigma of addiction and advocate for available treatment. During my tenure as your sheriff, we've dealt with major crimes, natural disasters, critical events. We've changed the culture in policing. We've instituted an outcome-based community policing model focused on sustainable, viable communities. And we've addressed the national challenge of employee recruiting retention. We've implemented in-car cameras and body-worn cameras to increase the trust in your police. The St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office, your Sheriff's Office, is a recognized leader in the law enforcement and corrections community thanks to our exemplary employees who honor their oath every day. It's essential that your Sheriff's Office remain in the hands of a progressive, competent leader with the courage to support the hardworking men and women of the Sheriff's Office in our community. Thank you.
The first question will be for Sheriff Cameron. Explain the process to which any officer has when they are disciplined and or fired, and how many people have been fired since 2006?
So we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So if an officer is investigated for misconduct, violation of policy or law, there's a complete and thorough investigation done. Administratively, if it's an administrative violation, if it's a criminal violation, it's a criminal investigation. Sometimes, most of the times, they're both. At the conclusion of the investigation, it's reviewed by our counsel. Charges are recommended. The officer can be charged with one or several charges. And from there, they have the right to have that adjudicated in a police hearing board, which is now open to the public. That's recently changed. If the charges are sustained, then the board recommends discipline. I'm the final authority on that discipline. I can keep it the same or review it and change it. And there are appeal rights from there. That's it in a nutshell. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
How many people have you fired since 2006?
Since 2006, I have terminated 13 police employees.
Mr. Belleavoine, what are the challenges facing corrections?
Corrections is an organism in and of itself. I had the opportunity to work the last couple of months of my career over there, and it is truly a culture and environment. What we're facing right now with corrections and the problems are, they're short-staffed. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover in mandatory overtime shifts that wouldn't be covered, and then you would have basically a position vacant when that person is supposed to, that officer is supposed to be there to protect your loved one. That's what happens. Most people who only truly are interested in the detention center are those who have family members there, and they wonder, is everything okay and are you going to be safe? For 10 years, we had a commander of law enforcement in there to the tune of about $2 million. For the last 2 years, there's been no commander of law enforcement over there. What happened to that position? Why did we forego that? Are we giving that up? Thank you.
The next question is for both candidates, and we're going to start with Mr. Belleavoine. Explain the Brady-Giglio rule and why it is important to law enforcement.
The Brady rule is important because the legislature came up with 3 issues: truthfulness, bias, any type of bias, and then any type of crime. If you are found guilty, not sustained, if you are found guilty of any one of those 3, it basically makes you ineffective in a court of law. Does that mean you don't have a law enforcement career? No, there are plenty of people still in the office who I believe are on the current Brady list and working for your sheriff's office. Thank you.
Sheriff Cameron, same question.
Mr. Belleavoine's right. The Brady versus Maryland is a 1963 case that basically said the court felt that Mr. Brady was not afforded his rights to exculpatory evidence, things that were in best light for him. Giglio is an additional, that's a U.S. law, so it is true. So if a police officer has a sustained finding or finding of guilt, it has to be furnished to the defense. And the Sheriff's Office has no one on a Brady list.
Next question is for both candidates. We'll start with Sheriff Cameron. What are some strategies for promoting safe and civil schools?
One of the things we've learned, I think, over the past, last year, more importantly, is to establish a dialogue with our students. They're the people that are closest to the problems in the schools, and most of the time the people that have solutions. The other thing is to engage the parents a real engagement, and then to include the partners that are involved in such things as school safety, heroin, opioid addiction, things like that. But the biggest thing I learned last year was the engagement of those students. You know, without talking to them, we don't really understand what their fears are. So you can't have civil engagement unless you have conversation and understanding between the students, teachers, staff, and the parents and community.
Mr. Belleavoine, the same question?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What are some strategies for promoting safe and civil schools?
The current administration being in place for 12 years, only experiencing that communication in the last year, that's bothersome to me. That truly raises concerns. For years, I've been saying that the community all says education, education, education of our students are number one. That's not. The number one thing that every parent wants is the safety of their child before that education piece. I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to work in special operations with all of our school resource officers. They are fantastic. They truly get into that culture and talk to those students. One of the pieces that we've been talking about for years is that school safety is number one, although we've carried multiple vacancies in school safety. And then we have the unimaginable, this terrible tragedy. My promise to you is to put an SRO in every high school, every middle school immediately, and work on a plan with the school board to affect every school. Thank you.
The next question is for both candidates, and we'll start with Mr. Belleavoine. Would you agree with a needle exchange program for heroin addicts?
Not having personal experience with that, I would really like to get an education from Dr. Brewster if she believes that that's the best plan and that's what the community says. I do remember being in an opioid summit just last week or 2 weeks ago where someone proffered to put needle sharp hard containers, basically hazard containers, in the bathrooms on public facilities. What's the community's feeling on that? I think it's a good idea. The problem is, being the devil's advocate, somebody can get into that shark's box. Somehow, some way, some 10-year-old or 12-year-old is going to go in and grab or figure out a way to defeat that device and get those needles, and now we have a bigger problem. So there's a lot of conversation that needs to occur in more than 1 minute standing up here. Thank you.
That conversation has already taken place, and it has for months, even years. Needle exchange I don't agree with in and of itself, but I do agree with needle exchange as part of harm reduction. And that's what you sat through last week. And so that harm reduction, what it told you was needle exchange was part and parcel to a larger program. So to exchange a needle, that individual would have to be in treatment. So it's not just needle exchange by and large of itself. As far as receptacles for take-back, the discussion is to put those receptacles, example would be in the sheriff's office where we have a drug drop box anyway. So this harm reduction and needle exchange has been in place for some time, successfully used in Indiana by now our Surgeon General of the United States because of escalating HIV and hepatitis cases going up and up and up because of dirty needles. My concern as the sheriff is the wellness of my employees who are exposed to those dirty needles, as well as fire and rescue.
Can I just add one thing real quick?
We're going on to the next question.
Okay.
This is for both candidates, and we'll start with Sheriff Cameron. Do you agree with metal detectors in schools?
I agree with metal detectors as an option in schools, but not the only option. So ultimately, that is not up to me. That is up to the school. I try to be an available resource for the schools when it comes to school safety, and I have been even prior to being sheriff. To be very clear, I think it's a good option. It's not a fail-safe. Washington, D.C. has metal detectors at their high schools, and they still experience guns in the schools. So it must be part of an overarching, all-containment kind of situation. Our problems with our schools is that if we put metal detectors, our students are going to queue up at that door and create a target-rich environment. That's a choke point. So there's ramifications, and I know that the school has considered all of that.
Mr. Belleavoine?
Just real quick on the last one, I understand the Sheriff's Office has biohazards in the lobby, and I'm fully good with that being in law enforcement. The discussion specific for sharps containers was in our library bathrooms. That's uncontrolled and unprotected. I got a problem with that, and I think the community would have a problem with that. Reference metal detectors. I do not believe that it is the only answer, and here's why. Any day, Monday through Friday, go to circuit court, go to district court, and watch the people who try to get in. You're only talking about 30, 40 people trying to get into the building to go to court at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Imagine 1,000 students trying to get in, even if it's a dozen sites, a door and entrances. What's the lag and delay time? You know, if you're really talking about metal detectors, you might want to be considering airport scanners that have a higher volume, and I'm sure a much higher price tag. And no one's discussing what that's going to cost. Thank you.
Next question is for both candidates. Start with Mr. Belleavoine. Do you agree with the plans to reduce Maryland's prison population by 30% by downgrading drug possession, expanding parole opportunities, and investing in reentry programs?
Absolutely. Well, and I believe that the Sheriff's Office has done a great job trying to explain over the years the cost it takes to take care of these inmates medically when you're talking about nonviolent crimes. Our detention centers and facilities should be there to protect us from predators. I think that more focus is on that. We have an excellent staff at the detention center. Rehabilitation is key. You're talking about simple possession. Now, you got into the possession with intent to distribute. That's a whole other beast. You're now hurting the community, not just hurting yourself. That needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Sheriff Cameron?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you agree with plans to reduce Maryland's prison population by 30% by downgrading drug possession, expanding parole opportunities, and investing in reentry programs?
No, I do not. And the reason I do not agree with that is because it is a state prison system. So understand, when the inmate population of the prison system is reduced by 30%, it's nonviolent offenses that are returned to this community, and what happens when they're returned to this community. A percentage of them, which is known, will reoffend, and then that is thrust upon the locals to pay for. So one, we endure the criminality of those people that will reoffend, and they will reoffend, because statistically we know that because of the number that are there for violation of probation. So that cost and that burden is transferred to us, along with the jeopardy that you're placed in.
The next question is for both candidates, and we'll start with Sheriff Cameron. Do you believe we have a school-to-prison pipeline? Is there data to show this? If so, what can be done about it?
A school-to-prison pipeline. So there are a number of studies that indicate there is a direct correlation to graduation rates and incarceration. And I agree, that's very true. So when you talk about crime rates and criminality, you have to look at the full circle, the big picture, not just policing, social services, Board of Ed. So the emphasis on education in our schools is paramount to reducing our prison populations and ensuring that these young people don't get into a life of criminality.
Mr. Belleavoine?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Do you believe we have a school-to-prison pipeline? Is there data to show this? If so, what can be done about this?
I do believe that idle minds cause problems, get themselves into trouble, and wind up in our detention facility. I disagree with the sheriff that exactly when we talk about removing nonviolent offenders from our own detention center, that's how we've been able to stay under an overbed population for a jail that hasn't been approved for 13 years. Excuse me, it just happened, I guess, 2 weeks ago. My approach to that would be the exact same thing you heard from the commissioners in here. We need, I can remember 20 years ago traveling to Fort Collins, Colorado, and seeing a facility there that was 10 times our public facility down here. We have great bills for the pool. There were all kinds of things for the children to do. Basketball, football, pool, racquetball, gym. Go right across the bridge, Cobb County. They have a facility that's 5 times the size of ours. We've dropped the ball when it comes to keeping our children engaged, and that's what we need to do. Thank you.
The next question is for Mr. Belleavoine. Did the sheriff's office respond to Great Knolls High appropriately? Why or why not?
I really was hoping we would not discuss the tragedy that occurred in our community. Everybody wants to believe that it can't happen, but it did, and now we're standing here faced with what has taken place. I believe every sheriff's office, Maryland State Police, fire and EMS, student and staff member of the school, and all of you parents acted in a correct manner. The only thing I disagree when it comes to that shooting is that after the fact, we parade around the officer across the nation, across the state, saying, gee, look what a good job we did. That's not appropriate. That officer will forever have to live with this, and he does not need to be reminded or stood up in front of groups to say, here's your award. Let's have, okay, here's your award. What he needs is the support of his family and the support of everybody he works with and the community he's in. We don't need to show off. It's inappropriate. He did his job.
Sheriff Cameron, this question is for you. You spoke of the rare opportunity to work at the jail as a deputy sheriff. Is there a deputy sheriff still working there?
I did not say I worked at the jail as a deputy sheriff. And no, there's no deputy sheriff at the jail. There are correctional officers at the jail. And since I have 50 seconds left, what I would point out is that you had the opportunity to say the right thing and you didn't do it. That SRO did his job, I agree, but he hasn't been paraded around. He was asked the question, do you want to represent our profession in a rare example of where our profession did the right thing? He agreed to that. So when he appears for an award, he represents every man and woman in our agency that is proud of him and proud of the response that day and proud of our community.
The next question is for both candidates, and we're going to start with Sheriff Cameron. Please share your thoughts on what else can you do to improve the safety and security of the downtown Lexington Park area over the next several years.
One, expand the services of our community policing unit. It's truly one of the first true community policing units in the sheriff's office. And I'm not casting any dispersion to anyone or anything. To increase the rank in there, the ranks in there, the numbers. Also to increase the numbers of patrol officers. Today we have 4 vacancies in patrol in the sheriff's office for sworn members. We have one of the largest academy classes that we've ever had. Looking forward to their graduation, and they will all go out. I'm looking forward to the building of our community policing station, where we will be able to have the public in and engage with our officers to determine what their the community priorities are and how they want to be policed.
Mr. Belleavoine?
I'm sorry, please repeat your question.
Sure. Please share your thoughts on what else we can do to improve the safety and security of the downtown Lexington Park area over the next several years.
The very first immediate need is to improve manpower across the board. It's not just about Lexington Park. You can go back 10 years, we put a police station in the Southampton neighborhood, and what did that do for the Southampton neighborhood? Did it improve their environment? In any way, do we still not have a lot of crime down there, but we have officers who come and go from the facility that is not manned 24/7. The Lexington Park office, we're years behind on that. I think we looked at it years ago, approval was given 4 years ago, and here we are 4 or 5 years down the road, and nothing's been done. The community police office, no. It should be district, it should be Lexington Park's district station, just like Charles County has 3 large facilities that cover their community. Why don't we have one in Charlotte Hall, one in Lexington Park, and one in Leonardtown? Why are we forcing these residents to travel to Leonardtown to see an officer unless somebody can come and see them. Thank you.
Next question is for both candidates. We'll start with Mr. Belleavoine. Do you believe that students should be allowed to fly Confederate flags or Confederate flag or Nazi symbols on school property? Why or why not?
While I find it distasteful that anybody would associate themselves with a Nazi group, a bunch of killers, killed millions of men and women, we all have a constitutional right to follow our beliefs. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but my job for 30 years is coming to you and your community and saying, how can I help you in protecting your rights? That's exactly what those students are doing. It's youth. They don't realize the harm that they're doing. They don't realize the circle of hate and discontent that this community, this nation, has suffered through for years. We can go back 50, 60 years and see the same hate and discontent. Go back years before that. When are we going to change it? Thank you.
Chair Cameron?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. Do you believe that students should be allowed to fly Confederate flags or wear Confederate flag or Nazi symbols on school property? Why or why not?
I do not believe they should, no, because it's distasteful and what it represents is distasteful. But whether or not they have a constitutional right to do that is another question. And ultimately, it would be up to the school board.
Next question is for both candidates, and we'll start with Sheriff Cameron. Why do you want to be sheriff? What do you think is the most important skill of being a good sheriff? And what separates you from the other candidate?
Wow. That was a card and a half there, I'm sure. I want to be sheriff because I work for and with some of the most creative, dedicated police officers, correctional officers, and civilian staff that you could assemble under one roof. And the environment in the sheriff's office right now is better than it's ever been. I look forward to going to work every day. I can't really call it work because I get to wear my passion to work every day. My goal has always been to develop the sheriff's office as a premier agency, and we've done that with premier people. And that's my desire to continue doing that. That's what I look forward to every day, is serving my community and looking for better ways through continuous improvement to move law enforcement services forward here in St. Mary's County within the confines supplied by the citizens of St. Mary's County, i.e. budget and tax. Thank you.
Mr. Belleavoine?
Repeat, please.
Sure. Why do you want to be sheriff? What do you think is the most important skill of being a good sheriff? And what separates you from the other candidates?
My primary reason hasn't changed since the day I started in 1989. I am your servant. I am not interested in being premier, elite, and I do not have an entitlement attitude where I think I'm better than anybody. Special operations is not just for special people. What I bring to the table, hands down, is genuine empathy. When I come to your door, when I come to your church, your community, or your business, I'm there for you. I'm not interested in trying to make myself look good. I want to know what I can do for you and how I can make you whole again. Because being a victim of violence is traumatic. What makes me a better candidate, or why do I think I should be there? Well, your incumbent in 2006 said he believed in term limits. Here we are 3 terms later and he's looking for a 4th term. I believe it's time to move forward. I believe I am that answer, and I will teach everyone my philosophies and primary responsibility of service over self.
Next question is for both candidates. We'll start with Mr. Belleavoine. What is the primary challenge faced by St. Mary's County, and how do you plan to resolve this challenge?
For 12 years, you've heard the same highlight reel, highlight reel, highlight reel, and then you've heard that it's a national issue, that we have a challenge in law enforcement. I would tell you to go 1 county north, 1 county east, and then go into the district, and you will see all of those agencies have nowhere near the loss in vacancies and turnover that this administration has suffered in 12 years. There will be a brochure available for you outside. You can look at some of the information that I've gleaned and put together. Currently, the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office is at half staff. We are running our people in the ground. We do not have the resources to cover the calls for service and/or effectively fight traffic. Just the other day, I drove from the Queen of Hearts and Ridge to Charlotte Hall, didn't see one police officer, didn't see one traffic stop. But what I did see was a handful, at least 20 people go by me at 20 miles an hour speed limit.
Same question, Sheriff.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. What is the primary challenge faced by St. Mary's County, and how do you plan to resolve this challenge?
First, I never said that I agreed with term limits, nor that I would only run for 3 terms. I have said that this would be my last term. That is correct. So the greatest challenge to St. Mary's County right now is the opioid epidemic. Hands down, people are dying every day here and throughout Maryland, throughout the United States. So that's the paramount challenge, because we're all affected. Everybody in this room knows someone. Everyone in this room knows someone, and we're affected by that. The medical industry is affected by it, big pharma is affected by it, and obviously tonight one of the things that we talked about was harm reduction, needle exchange. We're going to be confronted with continuing death rates because of the change in heroin. What we see in the 24 deaths that we've experienced so far this year is a cocktail mix of not just heroin, but fentanyl, carfentanil, spice, and cocaine. So we're nowhere near this thing working itself out. I like what is happening with our partners, overused term, but specifically correct in this one.
The next question is for both candidates, and we'll start with Sheriff Cameron. It is generally well known that the relationship between the Sheriff's Office and the Maryland State Police at the command level is not good. How will you improve that relationship and build upon the cooperation and coordination required to support the citizens of the county?
So first I would say I disagree that it's generally well known. It's not generally well known because that's not true. Tom White, who was the barrack commander, we got along exceptionally well. I have known his family for a number of years, even going to school with his brother, who's is running for judge of the Orphans Court. As evidenced by the number of operations that we did together, sobriety checkpoints, warrant sweeps, enforcement efforts, traffic enforcement efforts. I think it's a very good relationship, and it has been. There has been some moments, but we work that out like people do. So there is no adverse effect to public safety in St. Mary's County as a result of the excellent relationship we have. We have a new barrack commander, Crystal Rosenthal, and I look forward to us going to visit her and her coming to visit us. Otherwise, it continues to be an exceptionally good relationship.
Mr. Belleavoine?
Can you repeat the question, please?
It is generally well known that the relationship between the Sheriff's Office and the Maryland State Police at the command level is not good. How will you improve that relationship and build upon the cooperation and coordination required to support the citizens of the county?
Just as the current leader and myself, we both work the streets, we both work during the same time frame, we both work with a lot of excellent troopers. I'm not really sure where this is leading to. But I would say, I know Crystal Rosenthal just got promoted to division commander. That's excellent. She's an awesome person. But I have a good working relationship with, I believe, the region commander, Sean Morris. There were Tim White, as the sheriff said, is an excellent gentleman. My focus would be on, I know there was an article a couple years ago that came out in the paper, and it was not in favor of the current leadership and what was going on, because it was all about command and control and trying to determine who could see what information. But I would do the same thing I do every day, go in and make the best of it and move forward with communicating. We're here for the same thing.
This question is for Mr. Belleavoine. Are you supportive of the reentry program at the detention center, and how successful is it?
I am supportive of it. Do I know the statistics or facts on how popular it's working? No. I can tell you that if we started the process in 2005 for an expansion on the jail, and that need was slated to be done and in place to double our bed space by 2010, and that hasn't happened yet. We haven't even broke the first shovel in 2018. The office has been doing a good job. The men and women over there are truly, we are very fortunate in St. Mary's County. We have some of the best people I've ever worked with, but on both sides, correctional officers, deputy sheriffs, and civilians. But that's the only way. To have that reentry is the only way to avoid where we were when we first started looking for the expansion, and we were having inmates double bunk or quadruple bunk on a sled, 3 or 4 males or 3 or 4 women in a 10-foot by 10-foot section laying on the ground.
Sheriff Cameron, this question is for you. Is a sustained policy violation the same as a proven violation?
Yes.
We'll start with Sheriff Cameron. This question is for both candidates. How do you plan to address a lack of diversity in today's upper echelon of the Sheriff's Office?
By hiring diversity and placing them in the upper command, which I did a few weeks ago. I hired absolutely the best candidate that I could find. Former Major Marvin Butler from Charles County Sheriff's Office, Assistant Sheriff. He retired as a lieutenant. He brings incredible tenure, experience, and education. He's now our Chief of Staff. He's a division commander. I think that answers that question.
Okay. Mr. Belleavoine, same question. How do you plan to address a lack of diversity in today's upper echelon of the Sheriff's Office?
Real quick, go back to sustained and proven. Sustained and proven are not the same thing, not by a long shot. Sustained is a finding of a subjective investigation done internally at the direction of a commander. There's no true objectiveness there, it's subjective. Proven is when it's been adjudicated either in the trial board or a court of law where all sides are heard. Back to diversity. We had a wonderful woman in there. She left sometime at the end of last year. Can't tell you why. She was one of, I think, a dozen civilians that have left in the last year. That position remained vacant until this summer. So who was doing the job for 6 or 7 months? Did we not need it? But now we have Marvin Butler, and I have to agree. I've known Marvin for many years. He came from Charles County. He is an excellent resource. My plan would be to hire from within. We have several that should be up the rank and are not.
This will be our last question for the night, and it's for both candidates. We'll start with Mr. Belleavoine. What would you do about establishing an effective and independent civilian review board to examine police activity?
In the last year, it's been extremely rewarding to me to meet and reconnect with people all across our community and to just see how I touch their lives. But no one has ever requested or thought that a citizen review board is what we need. This sheriff's office, the entire time I was there, had a very high approval rating. From 1989 to 2015, we always received responses that we were doing the right thing. I know that a review board is in place in several large metropolitan agencies. How that would fit in here, I don't know. I'm happy to research it. I'm happy to see that. I know we have a Citizens Advisory Board which feeds us information from the community. The review board, it's something I'm willing to discuss, if any. Having no one approach me with it now, before this, I can only assume that that's a canned question. Have a good day.
Sheriff Cameron.
The law in Maryland on the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights is specific to police hearing boards. And without further information on the canned question, I will try to answer it through interpretation. So specifically, the conduct of the board, the membership of the board, but it has changed. And what has changed in police hearing boards is it is now open to the public and it's open to the media. The other component that was added is the ability for citizens to sit as a member of that hearing board. The caveat is they must be trained. I am one of the first law enforcement CEOs in Maryland to request the Maryland Police Standards Commission train civilians to sit on a hearing board. So, events, I'm not sure, but these would be police misconduct cases. We have a Citizens Advisory Board, and we do review and talk about events per se. Thank you.
We're going to start with the closing remarks now with Sheriff Cameron.
My appreciation to the League of Women Voters and the NAACP tonight for facilitating this forum. And I appreciate and thank everybody that's in attendance. I understand people have a tendency to rationalize and accept no responsibility for their own actions and to blame everybody else for everything that's happened to them. I understand that. But I learned in 2006 that St. Mary's County wanted a sheriff's office that was accountable to its citizens for its actions. You have that. I hope this election was going to be about processes and initiatives, ways to make sheriff's office service better to the public. I'm disappointed by what's transpired in the tenor of this election. What it's turned into is character assassinations instead of an idea, a process. Only one candidate has the executive leadership experience, critical incident management, budget and capital project development experience, and the experience of managing change, one of the hardest things. Ensuring an accountable police culture committed to community service, development, engagement, and justice-based policing. Only one candidate has extensive formal education and training. Only one candidate has committed their entire life to this agency, their entire career, fostering continuous improvement, holding people accountable, and moving forward. Only one candidate has acted within the exacting standards of our profession, holding those committing misconduct responsible in the best interests of our community, our agency, and our own personnel, who remain loyal to their citizens and to the oath that they took. Only one candidate is endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, the hardworking men and women of the Sheriff's Office, and I am that candidate. I am that candidate. I would ask you to please learn more about me at sheriffcameron.com. I appreciate the questions, and again, I appreciate you here being tonight. I am the right choice for Sheriff for St. Mary.
Mr. Belleavoine.
I'm sure that simply hearing my voice is bothersome. But I will not be muted, not like the 400 employees who have left here. When we start talking about what's best for our community, the difference in philosophy is real simple, okay? We all have the ability to do good things. We all have the ability to serve just like I did. I wanted to go in the United States Navy and follow my father, who followed his father. That couldn't happen. I picked the next best thing, quasi-military operation. I entered law enforcement. At no point in my career did I walk up to your door and treat you differently than I ever wanted my family to be treated or me to be treated. This is a document, strategic management plan. It's available to you all. Well, it was public. I don't think it's public anymore. Now you have to request a copy or get permission for it. But in it, it clearly tells you the tenor of where we were going as an agency and as an administration. Quote, we need to tell our story, make them understand. Who's them? The community? You're not them, you're us. We're the same. We do everything the same every single day. But interesting to find that we didn't talk about diversity or lack thereof. This administration has hired and retained one African American in 12 years. This administration has hired and retained a handful of female sworn officers. I'm talking about the officers who come to your community, come to your door, and help you and understand your culture and background. I'm sure there are more photos out there. But do you see diversity in this corrections class or in this deputy sheriff class? That's what I stand about. I'm not interested in formal education. I never thought it would complete me. What completed me was service to my community to the best of my ability. I ask for your vote on November 6th to move forward and change what's going on. Predictable is preventable.